What I'm about to reveal in this video will completely change the way you think about attraction, attention, and influence. Most men have been lied to their entire lives. They've been told it's about looks, charm, money, or how smooth you are with words. That is not true. The truth is far more powerful, far more subtle, and almost no one talks about it. Younger women, and people in general, are drawn to men for reasons that are invisible to the untrained eye. These are forces that most men ignore completely, yet they hold the key to becoming magnetic, unforgettable, and respected in every room you walk into. I'm going to show you the 8 things that older men do without even realizing it that make younger women go crazy. Not tricks, not manipulation, not acting like someone you're not. These are behaviors and mindsets that change everything because they speak directly to human psychology, energy, and perception. When you understand this, you'll see why most men fail. You'll see why chasing, over-explaining, and trying too hard doesn't work. And you'll see why the men who master these principles don't even have to try. The attraction comes naturally. If you watch this video until the very end, you will learn how to harness emotional power, confidence, purpose, and presence in a way that most men never even think about. You'll understand the subtle shifts that turn ordinary interactions into magnetic connections, and you'll see why self-mastery, not luck, not looks, is what makes someone irresistible. By the time this video is over, you will either be ready to change everything about the way you carry yourself, or you'll continue to blend into the background, never realizing what true influence feels like. So pay attention, because what I'm about to teach you is the kind of knowledge most men will never discover. And once you do, you can't unknow it. Let's start with something most people never truly understand about attraction. It's not about what you say. It's not about how you look. It's not about what you can give someone, how much money you have, or how many compliments you can throw out. The first, most fundamental layer of magnetism begins within you, in the quiet space of your own mind and heart. This is where emotional self-containment lives, and it is the invisible force that makes older men not just noticed, but unforgettable. Emotional self-containment is not simply keeping a cool face or pretending you are unaffected. That is performance. That is shallow, and most people see right through it. Emotional self-containment is a deep, internal mastery. It is the ability to navigate the storms of life, the highs and lows, the provocations and uncertainties, without needing anyone else to stabilize you. A man who is emotionally self-contained does not act out of fear, need, or desperation. He does not seek validation through attention. He does not over-explain, over-apologize, or overcompensate for insecurity. His energy is calm, ordered, and grounded, and this creates a magnetic pull that younger women and people in general are instinctively drawn to. Think about the world we live in. Most people are reactive. Most people are tossed around by emotion, by social media, by other people's opinions, by insecurity. They seek approval constantly, craving the next text, the next like, the next reassurance that they matter. And women, especially younger women, are no exception. They are constantly surrounded by men who are over-eager, who are emotionally unstable, who try too hard to impress. So when a man enters the room who is stable, who is centered, who does not rely on anyone else to complete him, it shocks them. It surprises them. It grabs attention because it is rare, and rarity is magnetic. Emotional self-containment is about being whole, not whole in a superficial sense, but deeply whole. A man who has cultivated this energy has done the work of self-awareness. He has learned his triggers, he has understood his weaknesses, and he has built the internal structures necessary to remain calm when life becomes chaotic. He does not act from insecurity. He does not react because someone challenged him, or because someone ignored him, or because someone said something he didn't like. He observes, he processes, and he responds, not out of urgency, but out of clarity. That clarity is intoxicating to a younger woman because it signals strength, stability, and reliability without even trying. There is also an undeniable psychological aspect to this. Human beings are wired to notice stability in a world of chaos. When people feel uncertain, their brains instinctively look for anchors, someone who can navigate reality without being swept away by every passing storm. This is why a man who is emotionally self-contained triggers an almost subconscious attraction. Younger women, who often encounter men who are impulsive, needy, or erratic, unconsciously sense that a stable man can provide security, not the kind that traps or controls, but the kind that offers calm, confidence, and direction. And the most interesting part is that this energy does not come from trying to impress anyone. It comes from being complete on your own. Emotional self-containment also communicates boundaries without words. You see, most men confuse attention with value. They believe that if someone doesn't respond to their messages immediately, or if someone questions them, or if someone acts indifferent, they have somehow failed. This leads to chasing, over-explaining, and reacting in ways that are obvious and unattractive. A man who is emotionally self-contained simply does not operate this way. He does not need validation from others because he has already validated himself. This independence of emotion makes him rare, and as humans, we are drawn to the rare because it feels valuable, it feels high quality, it feels earned. The beauty of emotional self-containment is that it is silent, subtle, and powerful. You do not have to boast about it. You do not have to make anyone notice it consciously. It is felt, it is experienced. Women notice it before they even think about it. They notice it in the way you hold yourself in conversation, in the way you do not panic, when someone challenges you, in the way you remain calm while others spiral. It is in the pauses you allow in a conversation, the slow, deliberate choices you make, the absence of desperation in your tone or actions. This is an energy that cannot be faked, and once it is sensed, it cannot be ignored. Now, let me be honest. Achieving emotional self-containment is not easy. It requires work, it requires reflection, it requires a willingness to face your own fears, your own insecurities, and your own impulses. It requires building discipline over your reactions. It requires practicing patience when the world demands instant gratification. It requires courage to be alone with yourself without feeling lonely. But the reward is unmatched, not just in attraction, but in life. When you master your emotional world, your interactions become effortless. You are no longer moved by the noise of others. You move with purpose, clarity, and quiet power, and that is the most attractive force in existence. Emotional self-containment is not about being cold. It is about being present. It is about being steady. It is about being available without being desperate, interested without being anxious, confident without arrogance. It is the difference between a man who chases and a man who is pursued. It is the difference between attention that is temporary and influence that is lasting. And it is the foundation upon which every other form of attraction is built, the foundation for respect, desire, and connection that is deep, meaningful, and magnetic. So, here is the truth I want you to take with you today. Most people will never understand this. Most men will never reach this level. But if you do, if you take the work seriously, if you commit to mastering your emotional world before seeking to impress the outside world, you will become a force that cannot be ignored. Women will feel it, people will feel it, and the most powerful part is that you will feel it in yourself first. You will know your own value, your own stability, your own strength, and that certainty cannot be taken from you. The man who is emotionally self-contained does not need the world to validate him. He already exists as a complete human being, and that is the rarest, most magnetic energy of all. Remember this, when you master yourself first, the world cannot resist you. Stability is irresistible, calm is compelling, and emotional wholeness is the ultimate form of attraction. Let's move on to something most men completely misunderstand, something so simple yet so powerful that it can change the way people perceive you overnight. It's not your charm, it's not your humor, it's not your ability to impress. What truly separates men who are noticed, remembered, and desired from the rest is the quiet, unwavering presence of standards and boundaries. Now, I want to be very clear. Standards are not preferences. Standards are not about having a long checklist of superficial qualities. Standards are about values. They are about knowing what you will tolerate and what you will not. They are about understanding your own worth and never compromising it for temporary comfort or approval. This is the energy that younger women and really anyone with self-respect subconsciously recognize and cannot resist. Think about it. Most men operate on the principle of negotiation. They bend, they yield, they tolerate disrespect, inconsistency, or even manipulation because they are afraid of being alone, afraid of losing attention, afraid that if they say no, they will be rejected. That fear is obvious. It leaks through in the way they text, in the way they apologize unnecessarily, in the way they over-explain. It signals weakness, and weakness is unattractive. Now, contrast that with a man who has standards. He doesn't compromise his values to be liked. He doesn't ignore red flags. He doesn't excuse behavior that undermines his dignity. When someone treats him disrespectfully, he walks away quietly, without drama, without apology. When someone tries to manipulate him, he remains calm, unshaken, and assertive. And here is the fascinating part. This does not push people away. It pulls them closer. Because human beings, and especially women, are wired to respond to confidence rooted in integrity. When a man stands firm in his principles, it communicates self-respect, and self-respect is magnetic. Boundaries work the same way. A boundary is the silent language of value. It is the invisible line that says, this is who I am, this is what I will accept, this is what I will not accept. Most men confuse boundaries with rigidity. They think that being firm means being inflexible or cold. That is not true. Boundaries are not walls, they are frameworks for connection. They show that you're available for the right people, the right interactions at the right level. They filter out energy that is not aligned with your standards, and in doing so, they create space for respect and genuine attraction. Let me illustrate this with something you may have experienced. Imagine a man in a social setting. He is approached by someone who immediately challenges his opinions, who speaks over him, or who subtly disrespects him. The average man reacts. He raises his voice, he argues, he seeks validation. That reaction is predictable, and it signals vulnerability in the wrong way. But the man with standards? He listens, he assesses, and he responds with calm assertiveness. He may politely disengage or set a firm boundary without aggression. That energy is electrifying. It creates curiosity. It creates respect. It communicates without saying a word that this man is not to be taken lightly. Here is the psychological truth behind this. People are subconsciously attracted to value, not attention. They are drawn to those who demonstrate worth through action, not pleading, through presence, not words. Standards and boundaries communicate worth in a way that words cannot. They demonstrate self-leadership. They demonstrate self-respect. They demonstrate that your life is not a reaction to the whims of others. It is a deliberate, intentional creation. And when a man embodies that, younger women cannot help but notice another aspect of standards and boundaries is that they create tension, the right kind of tension. Most men avoid tension at all costs. They try to be agreeable, avoid conflict, and please everyone. But here is the paradox. The men who are overly agreeable are forgettable. The men who create subtle tension by having standards are remembered. They are intriguing, they are compelling. The tension is not about drama, it is about alignment. It signals that not everyone can have access to this man, and when something is rare or limited, it becomes more desirable. Now, let's be honest, enforcing standards is not easy. It requires self-awareness and courage. It requires the ability to sit with discomfort without giving in. It requires the strength to say no when everyone else expects a yes, to walk away when compromise feels safer than confrontation. Most men never develop this. They mistake compliance for success, submission for connection. But the truth is, The opposite, boundaries and standards are not barriers, they are the foundation for respect, attraction, and meaningful relationships. They are the signal that you are a man who values himself, and the world responds to that energy. And here is something critical. Standards and boundaries must come from internal alignment, not ego or pride. A man who uses boundaries to control, manipulate, or dominate is not magnetic, he is dangerous, but a man who enforces boundaries because he respects himself and others, a man who walks away from what does not serve his values without resentment, without anger, without desperation, that man exudes authority in the most subtle and profound way. That is the kind of presence that younger women, and really anyone with self-respect, are drawn to instinctively. This is why men who master standards and boundaries are rare and why they are unforgettable. They do not need to seek attention. They do not need to beg for validation. They simply live in alignment with their values and the world responds. They are calm, centered, and firm, not rigid, not controlling, not reactive. They are admired because they are consistent. They are desired because they are whole. And most importantly, they are respected because they command respect from themselves first. So here is the takeaway I want you to hold on to. Standards and boundaries are not a technique. They are not a strategy. They are a way of living. They are the quiet signal of self-worth that speaks louder than any words or gestures. If you cultivate them, if you enforce them with calm confidence, if you allow them to shape your interactions naturally, you will find that the world, women included, treats you differently. You will find that people are drawn to you, not because you chase them, but because your presence communicates that you are complete on your own terms. The men who understand this do not try to manipulate attraction. They simply live with integrity. They simply honor their values, they simply enforce boundaries. And in doing so, they create an energy that cannot be ignored, a force that attracts naturally, effortlessly, and with deep respect. Remember this, when you value yourself and set clear boundaries, the world cannot help but value you in return. Standards are not limitations, they are power, and power is magnetic. Now, let's talk about something that most men completely overlook when they think about attraction. This is the silent, invisible qualities that older men often carry naturally without even realizing it. It's not about charm. It's not about money. It's not about looks. It's about having a life that does not revolve around seeking approval or attention from others. It's about purpose. It's about direction. It's about living a life that is anchored in something larger than yourself, and the magnetic power that comes from it. Younger women, and people in general, are subconsciously drawn to purpose. They are drawn to men who are driven, disciplined, and intentional about their lives. Why? Because most men are reactive. Most men drift through life trying to fit into someone else's expectations, trying to get noticed, trying to chase fleeting approval. That desperation is obvious. It leaks through in behavior, in tone, in body language, and it is exhausting to be around. But the man who lives in purpose, who is anchored in a vision for his life, who has routines, goals, and passions outside of attention, he radiates a different energy. Purpose creates a sense of direction that is inherently attractive. When a man wakes up in the morning and knows what he is working towards, when he invests his time in growth, in mastery, in meaningful projects, it signals competence, reliability, and discipline. It tells the world that he is not aimless, that he is not dependent on others for fulfillment, and that he has the ability to create structure in chaos. This is magnetic because humans, on a deep psychological level, are wired to seek stability and competence. Women, especially younger women, notice it almost immediately, even if they cannot articulate why. The man who has purpose does not cancel his life for attention. He does not rearrange his priorities to chase someone's approval. His goals exist before her, and they will exist after her. This is the paradoxical truth. The more a man's life is full, disciplined, and purposeful, the more magnetic he becomes, and the more people, including younger women, are drawn to him. They sense that his value does not depend on them and that freedom creates desire. Nothing is more intoxicating than a man who is self-led, self-driven, and independent in his direction. Purpose also gives a man presence. Presence is a quality that cannot be faked, and it cannot be learned overnight. It comes from knowing where you stand, what you care about, and what you are willing to work for, no matter the distractions around you. A man with purpose does not need to perform to impress. He does not seek validation in conversation or interaction. He carries an energy that is grounded, focused, and clear. That energy communicates competence without arrogance, stability without rigidity, and confidence without desperation. Presence like this creates curiosity, intrigue, and attraction that is effortless. Consider the contrast. Most men operate on a reactive level. They chase, they adjust, they bend, they compromise their own priorities to gain temporary attention. This creates a kind of low-level chaos that people feel unconsciously. It is exhausting, it is unstable. But a man with purpose is the opposite. He is deliberate. He is intentional. He does not need to over-explain himself or overcompensate. His life exists independently of anyone else's validation, and that independence signals value at a level that is deeply attractive. Purpose also communicates direction, in subtle ways. The way a man moves through the world, the way he allocates his time, the projects he pursues, the routines he maintains, they all send signals to others about his priorities, discipline, and seriousness. Younger women in particular are drawn to men whose lives feel organized, intentional, and driven. It suggests competence, reliability, and long-term thinking, qualities that are rare and deeply appealing. It is important to note that purpose is not about being consumed by work or obsession. It is not about neglecting relationships or social connections. Purpose is about balance. It is about living a life that is meaningful and structured while still being present, available, and emotionally intelligent. It's about having an identity outside of attraction, outside of validation, outside of performance. It is about building a life so full, so rich, and so disciplined that attention from others becomes a byproduct, not a requirement. Here is the deeper psychological layer. When a man has purpose, he becomes immune to the typical traps of insecurity and neediness. He does not overreact to rejection. He does not plead for attention. He does not measure his self-worth by the approval of others. This is incredibly attractive because most people, consciously or unconsciously, sense insecurity and neediness in others, and it creates discomfort. A man who is anchored in purpose is grounded, he is stable, he is reliable. That stability is a magnet. It signals that he is self-sufficient, emotionally resilient, and capable of leadership in life and relationships. Purpose also cultivates curiosity and respect. A man who lives intentionally is naturally interesting. His mind is engaged, his energy is directed. He has stories, experiences, and insights that most men never develop because they are too busy reacting or seeking approval. That curiosity about life, about ideas, about growth, is contagious. It draws people in, not because he seeks attention, but because he embodies energy that is alive, rare, and compelling. Another critical point is that purpose protects a man from desperation. Desperation kills attraction. Desperation signals neediness, fear, and lack of control. But a man who is driven by purpose cannot be desperate because his fulfillment is rooted in his own life, his own growth, and his own mission. His interactions become free of pressure, free of manipulation, free of the games that many people get caught in. That freedom is intoxicating. It creates desire, respect, and deep attraction without effort. Let me be very clear, cultivating purpose is not easy. It requires reflection, discipline, and courage. It requires the ability to define what matters to you and to act on it consistently. It requires resilience to face challenges without abandoning your direction. It requires patience, because meaningful purpose takes time to develop. But the reward is extraordinary, not just in attraction, but in life itself. A purposeful man is respected, remembered, and sought after, not because he chases, but because he commands a presence that cannot be ignored. So the takeaway here is simple yet profound. Do not make your life revolve around seeking attention or approval. Do not build your self-worth on the validation of others. Build a life that is anchored in meaning, discipline, and direction. Pursue your goals relentlessly. Cultivate your passions, master your routines, live intentionally. When you do this, you do not need to chase attraction. It finds you. Presence, curiosity, and respect will follow naturally, and people will be drawn to the life you embody, not the performance you offer. The men who understand this do not rely on charm or superficial tactics. They understand that attraction is a byproduct of a life fully lived, of energy directed, of purpose mastered. They are magnetic because they exist fully in their own world first, and everything else falls into place. Remember this: when your life has purpose, you do not need to seek attention. You radiate value. You exude stability. You create desire. A man with direction is irresistible because he is complete on his own, and the world cannot help but respond. Now, let's explore something so rare and so powerful that most men never even recognize it. This is where attraction deepens, where connection becomes magnetic, and where the energy of a man becomes unforgettable. I'm talking about authenticity and emotional polarity. These are not buzzwords, they are the subtle, invisible forces that signal strength, depth, and maturity, and when harnessed correctly, they have a pull that almost cannot be resisted. Authenticity is the foundation. Without it, everything else is superficial. You can have looks, money, charm, or influence, but if you are not authentic, the energy you project is hollow, and hollow energy is obvious. Authenticity is about knowing yourself so well that you do not feel the need to perform for anyone. It is about being grounded in your values, your principles, and your sense of identity. An authentic man does not seek approval, does not manipulate perception, and does not conform to the expectations of others just to be liked. This is a level of honesty and integrity that is rare, and it is profoundly magnetic. Consider how most men operate. They overcompensate. They act in ways that are performative, trying to impress, trying to gain approval, trying to fit into roles that they think will make them more attractive. That energy is exhausting. It is predictable. It signals insecurity. Women, and younger women in particular, are constantly surrounded by this type of behavior. It becomes background noise. But the man who is authentic is different. He is unpredictable in the most subtle and compelling way, not because he is playing games, but because he is unbound by external expectations. He is true to himself. He does not overreact to criticism, nor does he seek constant validation, and that difference is felt immediately. Now let's pair authenticity with emotional polarity, which is equally crucial. Emotional polarity is the balance of energy that creates tension in the right way. It is the dance between steadiness and responsiveness, presence and intrigue, calm and intensity. A man who understands emotional polarity does not compete with emotions, his own or anyone else's. He observes, he contains. He responds deliberately, not impulsively. When a younger woman expresses emotion, he does not mirror it in neediness or react in panic. Instead, he remains grounded, allowing the energy to flow without losing control. This is not detachment, it is mastery. It creates a psychological pull because it signals stability, strength, and safety. Think about the men most people encounter in daily life. They are reactive. They are easily influenced by others' moods. They are emotionally dependent. This creates chaos. People around them feel drained, uncertain, and anxious. Now imagine a man who is authentic and balanced in his emotional polarity. He is not drawn into unnecessary drama. He does not react to tests or manipulations. He does not bend under pressure to gain approval. Instead, he stands firm, calm, and deliberate. That energy is rare, and it is magnetic because humans instinctively notice stability amidst chaos. It feels safe, it feels compelling, and it feels high value. Another key aspect of authenticity and emotional polarity is clarity. A man who is authentic communicates clearly, not through words alone, but through energy and action. His intentions, boundaries, and presence are coherent. There is no confusion about who he is or what he values. Emotional polarity reinforces this clarity by showing that while he is available for meaningful connection, he is not driven by need or desperation. This combination of clarity and groundedness is intoxicating because it signals self-leadership. People are drawn to those who lead themselves first before trying to lead or influence others. Let's examine how this works in attraction specifically. Younger women are not necessarily drawn to older men simply because of age. They are drawn to older men who embody stability, confidence, and authenticity. These qualities are inseparable from emotional polarity. When a man is authentic, he is genuine in his interest and interaction. When he is skilled in emotional polarity, he manages tension, creates intrigue, and offers presence without desperatio. Together, these qualities create a dynamic that feels magnetic and rare. Women sense it almost instantly, often before they consciously process it. It is important to note that authenticity does not mean rigidity. It does not mean ignoring others' perspectives or being unwilling to compromise in healthy ways. Authenticity is flexible yet grounded. It is principled yet open-minded. Emotional polarity is not about being aloof or emotionally unavailable. It is about maintaining your center while engaging with the emotional currents around you in a way that feels natural, confident, and unshakable. This subtle mastery over self and energy creates an invisible signal that attracts attention and fosters deep connection. This combination of authenticity and emotional polarity also protects men from common mistakes that undermine attraction. Many men try too hard to please, over-apologize for minor missteps, or overcompensate to maintain interest. These behaviors signal insecurity, they create tension of the wrong kind, but a man who is authentic and balanced in his emotional polarity does not need to overperform. He is self-contained, he is confident in his worth, he is deliberate in his actions. That energy communicates strength, depth, and maturity in ways that words cannot. Now, achieving this level of authenticity and emotional polarity requires effort. It requires introspection. It requires confronting your fears, insecurities, and habitual reactions. It requires practicing presence, self-awareness, and emotional regulation. It is not something you can fake, because authenticity is felt, not just seen. Emotional polarity is subtle, not obvious, but the payoff is extraordinary. When you develop these qualities, your presence becomes magnetic, your interactions become effortless, you command attention without trying, you create desire without chasing, you build respect without demanding it. Here is the deeper truth. Authenticity and emotional polarity are not about manipulating others. They are about mastering yourself. They are about becoming a man whose energy naturally draws respect, attention, and attraction because it signals completeness, stability, and value. Women and people in general respond instinctively to that energy. They are drawn in without needing to understand why, and once they experience it, it leaves a lasting impression that cannot be replicated by charm, wealth, or superficial tactics. So the takeaway here is simple, yet profound. Stop performing to be liked. Stop reacting to every external stimulus. Stop trying to gain validation through effort or overcompensation. Instead, cultivate authenticity. Know who you are. Stand firm in your values. Pair that with mastery over your emotional energy. Observe without overreacting. Respond without desperation. Contain tension without suppressing it. When you do this, you create an invisible but undeniable force. You do not need to chase attention or affection. It comes to you naturally because your energy signals value, stability, and magnetic presence. Remember this, when you are authentic and balanced in your emotional energy, you do not need to impress. You do not need to chase. You do not need to explain. Your presence alone communicates strength, depth, and value, and that is irresistible. Now we arrive at one of the most misunderstood concepts when it comes to attraction and influence, confidence. Most people think confidence is loud, flashy, or performative. They think it's about showing off, about dominating conversations, or about seeking attention to prove that you're worthy. That is not confidence. That is desperation disguised as bravado, and most people mistake it for strength. True confidence is the quiet force that comes from mastery of self, not mastery over others. It is the energy that emanates when a man is so anchored in his own identity, so secure in his values, that he does not need anyone's approval to feel whole. And that, above all, is the energy that younger women are unconsciously drawn to. Let me explain why this matters. Most men operate from neediness. They tie their self-worth to external validation. If someone likes them, if someone notices them, if someone pays attention, they feel powerful. But when that attention is absent, they crumble, they overcompensate, they chase, they react impulsively. That energy is obvious and unfortunately predictable. It signals dependence, and dependence, no matter how subtle, kills attraction before it even begins. True confidence is different. It is rooted in self-mastery. It begins with the understanding that your value is inherent. It does not fluctuate based on who likes you, who approves, or who validates you. A man who masters himself has invested in his growth, his discipline, his mental and emotional resilience. He has confronted his fears, faced his insecurities, and built an internal foundation so solid that no external circumstance can shake it. This is confidence that is invisible to the eye but palpable to the mind. It is the energy that radiates from so many who knows without doubt who they are and what they bring into the world. When a man operates from self-mastery, he does not react to tests or challenges. He does not feel threatened by a woman's independence, by her opinions, or by her emotions. He observes, he processes, and he responds intentionally. He does not chase or plead. He does not over-explain or justify himself. That energy, calm, deliberate, non-needy, is magnetic because it signals a man who is complete in himself. People, especially younger women, sense this energy instinctively. They feel drawn to it before they even understand why. Confidence through self-mastery also communicates freedom. When a man is not desperate for approval or affection, he operates from a place of choice, not compulsion. He can engage, connect, and invest in relationships because he wants to, not because he needs to. This subtle distinction changes everything. Desperation is heavy, oppressive, and repelling. Freedom is light, compelling, and attractive. When a man demonstrates that he is free to walk away at any moment, not as a threat, but as a natural consequence of self-respect, he becomes irresistibly magnetic. Another layer of confidence comes from discipline and self-leadership. A man who has mastery over himself has control over his habits, his routines, and his environment. He invests in his mind, body, and character consistently. This is not about vanity or superficiality. It is about stewardship over one's own life. Discipline signals competence, resilience, and long-term thinking, qualities that are deeply attractive at a subconscious level. Younger women, especially those who are attentive to energy rather than appearances, notice the subtle cues, the way he carries himself, the way he handles adversity, the consistency in his actions. These cues communicate leadership, not over others, but over himself. And that is one of the most compelling forms of confidence that exists. Let's also talk about fear. Most men operate from fear, fear of rejection, fear of inadequacy, fear of losing control. Fear drives reactive behavior, it drives overcompensation, it drives insecurity. A man who masters himself does not eliminate fear entirely. Fear is natural and necessary. But he does not let fear dictate his actions. He acts despite fear. He faces rejection without losing his center. He handles uncertainty without desperation. That ability to remain calm and deliberate in the face of fear is magnetic because it communicates mastery, stability, and competence, qualities that are universally attractive. This self-mastery also fosters authenticity. Confidence through self-mastery is inseparable from being true to oneself. A man who has mastered himself does not pretend to be someone he is not. He does not act according to what he thinks will please others. He does not chase approval or validation because he knows that his worth is not contingent on external factors. This authenticity, combined with inner confidence, creates a presence that is undeniable. Women and people in general respond to authenticity at a deep psychological level. It signals integrity, reliability, and emotional strength, qualities that cannot be faked or manufactured. Now, achieving this level of self-mastery requires effort, reflection, and courage. It requires honesty with oneself. It requires confronting weaknesses and fears that most men avoid. It requires the discipline to build habits, routines, and structures that reinforce growth rather than dependence. And it requires the patience to understand that true confidence is cultivated over time, not bought, borrowed, or faked. But the reward is unparalleled. A man who achieves self-mastery no longer needs to chase attraction because his energy naturally draws people toward him. He becomes magnetic, respected, and deeply influential. Not because of what he says or does superficially, but because of the energy he embodies consistently. And here is the final, critical insight: confidence through self-mastery is contagious. When you operate from a place of internal stability, others respond in kind. People around you mirror your energy, your composure, your intentionality. Younger women in particular sense that energy and respond positively to it. They feel drawn to it because it signals that you are someone who can navigate life with competence, who can maintain emotional balance under pressure, and who is secure enough to allow them space and freedom without feeling threatened. So the takeaway here is profound and simple. Stop seeking validation. Stop measuring your worth by attention. Stop reacting out of fear or neediness. Instead, invest in self-mastery. Build discipline. Strengthen your mind, body, and character. Confront fear. Cultivate emotional stability. Live intentionally. When you do this, you do not need to perform, manipulate, or chase. Confidence becomes effortless. Because it is a byproduct of the man you have become, not the image you project. Remember this: true confidence is not loud, it is not desperate, it is not performative. True confidence comes from mastery of self. When you are anchored in your identity, disciplined in your life, and unshaken by external validation, your energy becomes magnetic, and that energy will draw people to you effortlessly, naturally, and irresistibly.